wars are fought first through supply chains, right? And during peacetime, the United States military has certain requirements to maintain a peacetime arsenal and peacetime level production. So peacetime production and peacetime supply reserves are much less than wartime, right? And it's because the idea is if some kind of conflict were to break out, then all of the existing supply would be used to support the conflict while we spun up production to start producing more weapons. Well, what happened here is that the conflict wasn't with the United States. The conflict was with not even an American ally, but a country that we chose to support at a certain time. So all of our reserves of weapons, which were all dated, they all had a shelf life, right? It's kind of like when you fill your pantry with canned tuna fish and canned beans. As soon as a snowstorm hits, you use that first because you want to use it up, right? You don't want it to expire. So we sent them all of these dated weapons. That was the first round of weapons that we sent. Well, then, as the conflict continued, we started seeing it as an opportunity for us to test some of our more modern weapons. So we sent HIMARS. Now we're sending different types of satellites and radio equipment, right? We started sending more experimental stuff, drones, to Ukraine. But we never started resupplying our stocks because we kept producing at peacetime levels, even though Ukraine is spending ammunition at wartime levels. So that was part of the reason the United States started telling Germany and France and Poland they had to start sending weapons to Ukraine, was because our peacetime reserves were used up and our peacetime production levels can't maintain the fight. Mm-hmm. So we're in this jam. And in this jam, we have to decide as a country, do we start producing at wartime levels, even though we're not at war? One of the big reasons that you see bipartisan support for the conflict in Ukraine is because both Republicans and Democrats know that their constituencies are going to benefit when the American military-industrial machine starts producing at wartime levels, producing more ammunition, more cannons, more small arms, more protective gear. We're going to make a huge stockpile to support us if we ever go to war with China, but we're also going to create this huge stockpile that we can then keep using to supply Ukraine and drive up GDP, drive up American benefits, right? The same thing is happening in Russia. And this is where, again, if you're going to be honest, you gotta call honesty for what it is. Russia is fighting Ukraine with Russia's old weapons. That's why the tanks that they use and the guns that they use and the ammunition that they use failed them. We sent our surplus and our stockpile to support Ukraine. Russia used their surplus and their stockpile to launch an invasion. That's why it didn't work. Now, all of Russia's best stuff, Russia's a little bit like us. They create weapons. They invent weapons. They also manufacture weapons, but the main source of their income is in exporting those weapons. So for the last 25 to 30 years, Russia's been exporting their cutting-edge weapons and their dated weapons. They've been exporting them to places like China. So when you hear headlines now talking about China giving lethal aid to Russia, what that really actually means is China reselling their Russian ammunition back to Russia. That's not the same thing. If America has given advanced weapons to Ukraine, essentially on a lease basis, right? We have given Ukraine better weapons than they previously had, and we're giving them our weapons. The lethal aid that people are trying, that the newspapers and the White House are trying to say is a red line of some sort. The lethal aid that China is trying to support Russia is actually just giving them back the same weapons that Russia sold to China in the last 20 years. 20-year-old shells, 15-year-old cannons, right? They're just selling them back the same munitions that they bought from them before. That's bull market. That's capitalism, right? So it's interesting to me that there's such a campaign right now at the NATO and the media level to make it seem like China's crossing some sort of red line by essentially just selling back Russian weapons back to Russia, because Russia can't manufacture weapons at wartime levels either, right? It takes time to spin that up.
Yeah.
Clearly, there's hypocrisy going on here, right? We're giving high-tech weapons to Ukraine. Russia's buying back their own old weapons from China. It's not quite the same thing. Is it lethal aid? It is, but we're also giving lethal aid to Ukraine. So is it because this war is illegal? There's no such thing as a legal war.
Yeah.
All war is illegal. So I'm not quite understanding here outside of the lens of shaping a narrative. It's not really true. It's not something that I understand why we seem to think that it's worth it to escalate this conflict. Why would we escalate the conflict with China? Why would we risk escalating conflict with China over what Russia and Ukraine have been fighting for the last year?